Hey guys, I hope you had a great Wednesday. We are back ready to keep going with lesson 9.3. We have already talked about how we can relate tenths and hundredths to decimals, and now we are going to relate tenths and hundredths to each other with equivalent fractions and decimals. All right, so this problem says Daniel spent a day hiking through a wildlife preserve. During the first hour of the hike, he drank 6/10 liter of water. How many hundredths of a liter did he drink? So this is our question we are looking at. How many hundredths of a liter did he drink? But notice that they gave us the amount that he drank in tenths in the problem. So we're going to have to figure out what 6/10 is equivalent to in hundredths. So I've got two models here. I'm going to go ahead and shade 6/10 on this model: 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, and 6/10. Okay. Now I'm going to shade the same amount over here: 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, and 6/10. But what I'm going to do now is I am going to create hundredths over here. Okay, so now we have a hundredths chart. Did I shade in the same amount? Yes, I shaded in 6/10 for each of those models and then just created the hundredths here. So if I look here, tenths, hundredths. So I've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 shaded in over here. And what would my denominator be for this model? Right, it would have to be 100 because there are 100 squares in this model. Well, let's look at how we can get from 6/10 to 60 hundredths. All right, remember when we were talking about equivalent fractions back in chapter 6, we were talking about how in order to make an equivalent fraction, you must multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, or else it's not going to be equivalent. So what we can look at here is, because we know what our denominator is, we can look at it and say, okay, 10 times what is going to get me 100? Well, 10 times 10 gets us 100, right? All right, so we know that we had to multiply our denominator by 10 to get 100. So if I'm going to multiply my denominator 10, well, that means that I have to multiply my numerator by, yes, by 10. So 6 times 10 equals 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And that is why 6/10 and 60 hundredths are equivalent. So let's look at writing 60 hundredths as a decimal. How many ones do we have? Very good. We have 0, 1. So a 0 would go there. And then what always has to go in between our ones and our tenths? Exactly. A decimal point. How many tenths do we have? How many tenths do we have shaded? Very good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths are shaded. And how many extra hundredths? Very good. 0 extra hundredths. So 6/10 is equivalent to 60 hundredths. Powers of 10 with this chapter, boys and girls. Powers of 10. All righty, let's look down here and let's go backwards. What if I gave you something that was already in the hundredths and I needed you to tell me how to get to the tenths? All right, so we know that my new denominator has to be tenths. So how do I get to a smaller number? I can't multiply going backwards. I'm going to have to divide. So you have to say to yourself, what can I divide 100 by to get 10? Very good. Remember, powers of 10. 10 is correct. 100 divided by 10 is 10. So whatever I do to my denominator, I must also do to my numerator in order to make them equivalent. So when I look at 30 divided by 10, I can think to myself, okay, I don't really know 30 divided by 10 when I say it that way, but what if I said 10 times what gives you 30? Very good. 10 times 3 gives us 30. So 30 hundredths is equivalent to 3 tenths. 30 hundredths can be written just like this. 0 decimal point 30 is equivalent to 3 tenths. Very good. All right, boys and girls, that is it for equivalent fractions and decimals. Remember the powers of 10. You either multiply by 10 to get from tenths to 100ths, or you divide by 10 to get from 100ths to tenths. All right, boys and girls, have a great afternoon. I will see you tomorrow for lesson 9.4.